What up, world? It's your man G Williams coming at you. And as you already know, it ain't right because I ain't wrapped too tight. But I'm going to say something. So I definitely got to say something.
What up, world? It's your boy G Lewis, and I just want to let you know I say what I say because I am my father's son, and the champ is here. Let's go.
Let's begin now.
360.
I woke up this morning and I said, instead of waiting for a good day to happen, waiting around.
What we're coming to you with today is some seriousness. All right, we've done plenty of shows where we've taken some light topics, we've done some kind of funny stuff, but what we have to talk about today really ain't a game. We may even sound like some conspiracy theorists today, but it all depends on your consciousness and where you are at in your mind to accept some of the information that we're going to lay on you. Okay, we're talking about the extermination of the black man in this country, in this society. As you know, we were brought over here as an unpaid labor force, and that was our sole purpose. But fast forward today, how we have transcended and made some major moves and some major progress in this country, yet old tactics are still at work. Because in order for the big C to function, that's capitalism, we've got to have an underpaid or low-class labor force. And they're getting it with the new Jim Crow, with the prison systems, and everything else. So we're gonna dip into that today. So with that said, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so the extermination of blacks in America. Your thoughts? Is it real? Is it not?
Without a doubt, it's real. That's the one fact that I don't think anyone can argue. I think one of the things that we want to do tonight is kind of frame the ways in which it's happening. The best way to exterminate anything is not to let it know that it's being exterminated, and that's kind of what's happening today. That's the reason why we have some of the problems we have. But it's without a doubt it's happening.
Good point. Let's get into the beginning of where it all started, or at least a piece of the beginning, which is the eugenics movement. Go look that term up, eugenics. But basically, there was a group of radical scientists in this country back in the early 1900s who started to scientifically discriminate against African American citizens within the country, in a way to actually systemically control the numbers that we had, and or ultimately exterminate everything that wasn't needed. And so fast forward to the 1930s, 1940s, where you now start to see Planned Parenthood, started by Margaret Sanger, a known eugenics, who said that her mission with the Planned Parenthood was to put them into the neighborhoods to ultimately control the black population through sterilization, through the birth control, and through a bunch of other means that her and her group, which is funded by big money, devised in order to control our numbers and our populations. That's one way. That's history of one way that we're getting exterminated. Speak on that point a little bit.
Okay, so pretty much what you have to do is what happens a lot of times is we know the how, but we don't ask the why. So why is all of this stuff happening? Why did eugenics happen? Why did that happen in the 1900s? Was it just for systematic control? Was it just for the purpose or the intent of disenfranchising a specific group of people? Or is it the fact that we live in a capitalistic society, and at the end of the day, everything comes down to money? So when you look at equality, the best way for you to gain power is to ensure, or maintain power, is to ensure that there is no equality. If you look throughout history, that has been consistent. I might, back in the day, I might come to your kingdom, take over your kingdom, and you're still the king, but now you work for me. And as long as I keep that balance, there's no power. Well, that's the same intent and the same tactics that was used against, the African Americans in America. It was also used against the Native Americans. It was used against the Hispanics because money drives America.
That's right.
So when you look at that, so you look at the African American, they were the hardest group to contain throughout history. They were robbed of their language. They were taken out of their environment. And yet they still found ways to overcome their circumstances, right? So at the end of the day, what's the best way to stop and control them? When you take away people's ability to reproduce, and now you really have total control over their numbers. Once you have control over their numbers, then you don't ever have to worry about being overrun. Like if you look at the current status in America, they were so worried about African Americans and controlling African Americans, they weren't watching the Hispanics, and the Hispanics had tripled the amount of Hispanics in the population of America. So you'll probably see some of those same tactics be directed at Hispanic communities, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to dollars.
Absolutely. Good point. Good point. And so, as we see the way that it was broken down with the eugenics and trying to control the numbers, then we move on to, okay, we've gotten through slavery, post-slavery, now we're in the new Jim Crow era, where basically the dominant society is trying to keep that free labor class going through imprisonment of our young men and women. You have the school to prison pipeline, where basically in education, if you're not excelling to go to the workforce, you're being groomed, you're being primed to go to the prison house.
Right.
You're going to work for us one of two ways, whether the one you can go home to every day, or the one you're going to stay there and work for us. And so that school to prison pipeline is being fed, and there's multi-million dollars with the privatization of prisons, so on and so forth. And within that, you got 1, 2, 3 strikes on your record, felony counts, convictions where you have lost your right to vote,
Right.
and you have lost all rights and privileges, quote unquote, granted, and you're doing nothing but furthering that new Jim Crow. As Michelle Alexander, and I got to give her props, this is where I got a lot of information from. Haven't read her book yet, but I will. The new Jim Crow is something real, because again, in prison, or the war on drugs is creating such a vast influx of people who are being disenfranchised, and they're losing their rights to vote again, and basically being caught with an ounce of weed on your person, and you weren't going to sell it, or you were just going to use it for personal consumption. That's become the new poll tax. Okay, you don't have to take a test no more. You just got to stay from getting arrested, or else you didn't fit into the system of that. So I mean, again, tactic for tactic, as we always say, it's chess. It's not checkers.
That's right.
And that's what's going on with this new modern day Jim Crow.
I think this is very important for parents to kind of understand. When we talk about school to prison pipeline, what we're talking about are a lot of the tactics that are being used in schools today. I read an article about a student who kissed a girl on the hand and was suspended. 7-year-old kid.
I saw that, yeah.
Kissed a girl on the hand and got suspended. So now this kid has a black mark on their record. Suspended, right? How many suspensions does it take to get expelled, right? That record follows you.
Right.
So for a lot of parents, they have to understand that these things are happening in their schools, because this is how students are being groomed for gladiator academies, like foster homes and group homes and things like that. This is how they're being groomed through these tactics. Because if you're expelled, then you're not going to class, you're not getting educated. And if you're not getting educated, then you try to go to another school looks at that same record and says, oh, you're a troublemaker, right? You've already been labeled a troublemaker before you take your first class. So for parents, you got to be very, very cautious and be very mindful at the school's records of suspensions and expulsions. Not also that, it's very important that you go to those student teachers meetings. It's very important that you attend city council meetings and school board meetings, because this is where these decisions can be affected and changed. A lot of parents don't even realize that they have that kind of authority and power to overcome some of these tactics. Right. And then when we talk about the prison the prison pipeline, we're talking about back again to capitalism. One of the biggest businesses right now in the country is prisons. It's big business, and there's an unlimited amount of customers. You know what I'm saying when it comes to big business. I mean, this didn't just start recently, which is I'm glad you mentioned Michelle Alexander. Read her book, awesome book. There's another documentary called Slavery by Another Name. It's definitely another one that you should check out. But I linked those two together because this didn't start today. This started when the amendment to free the slaves was written.
Right.
When it was written, if you read it, everybody loves that first part about it. You know, no man or woman shall be deemed a slave. They love that part. It's beautiful to listen to, but they don't read it thoroughly. Because if you read it thoroughly, you get to the part where it says except. Mm-hmm. Except for person that commits a crime. So you can be a slave if you commit a crime. All of these things were set up then, which is why Jim Crow, not even the modern day Jim Crow, but the original Jim Crow was even allowed to happen. They looked at that amendment and said, so let me get this straight. You just got freed from my plantation. So if I want you to work at my plantation, all I have to do is get you arrested, right? That tactic has been consistent. The war on drugs you mentioned. I mean, the crack to cocaine ratio is 100 to 1. Mm-hmm. Now the president just lowered it to 18 to 1. But why not 1 to 1? If I'm caught with an ounce of crack, why shouldn't I get the same amount of years as a person who's caught with an ounce of cocaine? Well, cocaine is a more expensive drug. It's typically found in more expensive areas. Crack is found in low budget areas. And one of the biggest points that comes from this modern day Jim Crow is the creation of a whole new caste system of individuals. The ex-con, the low income individual, is the new caste system. It's not just a war on black people. It's a war on poor people. So by keeping black people poor, you automatically are associated in war. So it's very important that people realize that the way the justice system works, it is very easy for you to be sucked into that caste system. But how do you combat it? Well, you combat it by making sure that you're not just against the system, but a part of the system. We need more black lawyers. We need more black cops. We need more black judges. Now, this is something we have constantly looked at as something that is adversarial to us because we're not looking at the war intelligently. Right. Reason why America they have such a high winning record in wars is because we know how to fight them. And we'll fight them by any means necessary. And sometimes that means going on the side of the enemy. We have learned how to, we created double agents. We created, guerrilla warfare. We created guerrilla warfare back in the Civil War. We couldn't stand out there with those red coats. It was too many of them. So we started attacking them from the trees and from the bushes, and we started coming out the grass. We figured out how to win. And so as soon as poor people and black people start thinking about how to win, then it changes the way the game is played. Like we say, this is chess, not checkers.
That's it. Great point. Great point. Okay. And so we've talked about eugenics. We've talked about modern day Jim Crow. Now let's try and move it even fast forward to modern day where maybe some of you youngsters out here will get it. Some of you youngsters out here might see what's going on. You know, it's been proven back in '96 by Congressman Maxine Waters with the whole drug scandal and the CIA in the what's it called, dark guerrilla operation. The name escapes me, but how the CIA funneled and distributed drugs in urban communities throughout the state of California. Okay? And not only that, first came the drugs and then came the guns. And so, when a lot of you youngsters out there were just coming up, you are the product of this environment that the government themselves created. And to bring it all the way home to you, to try to relate to the youngsters, a man by the name of Freeway Ricky Ross took the fall for all of it. Okay? Now I want you to go and look up Rick Ross.
The real one.
The real Rick Ross. Okay? He is the gentleman that a lot of you youngsters are following a fake, because he took his name and he took his lifestyle. Now, having no information knowing how detrimental that was to why you young men and women are out there killing each other on the streets today. Okay? You're doing it in the name of a fraud. So take a minute. Let's stop. Let's put the guns down. Okay? Because it's by grand design. Again, they did it to you by scientific racism. It's been done to you by political racism. It's been done to you by legal racism with the Jim Crow movement. Now it's, again, another chess move to make you do it to yourselves. Okay? And that's what has to stop. And that's what the Book of G is dedicated to. We are living examples of what it takes to go from hood to good. All right? And we want to, again, I can talk to you or I can talk at you. It's up to you. But let me talk to you and just tell you, you're going to make mistakes. You're going to go out there and do some things because you know what? You're not going to believe me and you got to test it for yourself. That's fine. You make a mistake. Just remember that one mistake, that split-second decision affects your life and it affects the life of everybody around you. Okay? So think a minute and know that it's by systematic design that you've been placed in the position in which you are now. Let's rise above. So with that, again, I'm G. Williams.
Yeah, I'm G. Lewis.
And that's the Book of G. Talk about it. And as always, make sure you like, make sure you leave a comment, start the dialogue. And if we say something that strikes a nerve, make sure you share it. Again, this one wasn't a comedy routine. This is a serious topic that we need to continue to address, because you know what? We are dying. Our babies are dying. And we've got to do something that changes that whole equation. Until the next time.
I'm out for presidents to represent me. I'm out for presidents to represent me. I'm out for every presidents to represent me.
Who wanna bet us that we don't touch letters, stack cheddars forever, live treacherous, all the etceteras. To the death of us, me and my confidants, we shine. You feel the ambiance, y'all niggas just rhyme. By the ounce though accumulates like snow. We don't just shine, we illuminate the whole show. You feel me? Factions from the other side.